The stars blinked cold and distant over the peaceful world of Valera. Its skies shimmered with pale blue light, and its two moons hung low like silent watchers. For centuries, Valera had been a quiet, gentle planet, home to a civilization that prized knowledge and peace above all else. The Valerans had never known war or cruelty. Their cities glowed softly in the twilight, filled with scholars, artists, and scientists who sought only to understand the universe. But now, that peace was shattered. Across the dark void, a terrible enemy moved closer in unstoppable force that threatened to wipe Valera from the stars forever. The Valerans called them the Ravagers, a cruel and merciless species bent on conquest and destruction. Whole worlds had already fallen to the Ravagers, their people enslaved or destroyed. Valera was next. In the Grand Council chamber of Valera's capital, the air was heavy with fear. The elders, tall and calm, sat in a circle beneath the glowing dome of the council hall. Their faces were etched with worry, though they spoke in measured tones. Outside, news came faster and worse with every hour. The Ravager fleet was growing nearer. The Valerans had done everything they could, tried to negotiate, to hide, to prepare, but it was not enough. Their technology was no match for the Ravagers. Brutal war machines. "What hope remains?" whispered a young envoy, his voice shaking. "We cannot fight them alone." The eldest among the council rose slowly. His silver eyes shone with a strange light, a mix of sadness and determination. "We have sent messages to every known ally, every star in reach. No one answers. Valera stands alone." The chamber fell silent, the weight of those words sinking deep. Then, the youngest member, a bright and hopeful scientist named Lyser, stepped forward. "There is one last chance. A legend almost forgotten, whispered among the stars' Earth. They say Earth's warriors are unlike any others, fierce, ruthless, survivors of worlds harsher than ours. If they hear our call, they might come." The council turned to Lyser with surprise and doubt. Earth was a distant, almost mythical place to them. Few Valerans had ever heard of it. It was said Earth was a Deathworlder planet so dangerous that only the strongest could live there. The stories told of warriors bred to survive any threat, hardened by brutal conditions and endless battles. "Is this not dangerous?" asked another elder. "What if they bring more war than salvation? What if their help destroys us instead of saving us?" Lyser nodded. "I do not know, but our choices are gone. If Earth answers, we must accept whatever comes." The council agreed to send a final, desperate signal and SOS carried by the fastest ships deep into the galaxy, hoping against hope that Earth would hear. Across the void, on a world very different from Valera, the Earth fleet stirred. Its ships hung in silent orbit around a harsh red planet, one of many death worlds. Places where only the fiercest could survive. The soldiers of Earth, known as Deathworlders, were unlike any other fighters in the galaxy. They were trained, from birth, to endure pain, hunger, and endless battle. Their minds were sharp, their bodies strong, their hearts cold with resolve. They had no patience for weakness, no mercy for enemies. In the command center of Earth's warship Reapers, Edge Commander Eric stood before a massive display. The screen flickered, showing the faint trembling signal from Valera. The data was fragmented and weak, but the message was clear, a plea for help. A call from a dying world. Eric's jaw tightened as he studied the transmission. A civilization on the edge of destruction, call for aid from a soft, peaceful people. He turned to his officers. "This is not our usual fight. They want saviors, but we are warriors. What do we do?" Lieutenant Mira, sharp-eyed and fearless, stepped forward. "We are Deathworlders, sir. Our job is to save, yes, but with power, with strength. If they want peace, they must accept our way. We cannot save them with kindness." Arik nodded slowly. "Prepare the fleet. We answer the call. We go as Deathworlders. We do what must be done." Back on Valera, the skies darkened with the shadows of approaching warships. The Valerans watched from their cities, hearts pounding as the unknown fleet entered their system. The ships were massive and strange, black and gray, armed with weapons that pulsed with deadly energy. The Deathworlder fleet was unlike anything Valara had seen. Their ships moved with terrifying speed and precision, their crews ready for combat. At a moment's notice, when the Deathworlder commanders made contact, their message was direct and cold. "We are here to save you, but we fight with no mercy. Trust in our strength or fall." Fear gripped the Valarans. They had hoped for allies who would bring peace, not war. But the enemy, the Ravagers, were closing fast, and the Deathworlders were the only hope. As the first skirmishes began at Valara's borders, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Deathworlders struck swiftly and without hesitation. Their weapons tore through the Ravager ships with brutal efficiency. Where others might show restraint, they showed none. Civilians feared the cost of their protection. Yet slowly, the tide began to turn. In the council chambers, Lyser stared at the battle reports, torn between awe and fear. "They fight like monsters," she whispered, "but they fight for us." Outside, the people of Valara whispered stories of strange heroes, humans who survived death worlds, who thrived on harshness, who brought both salvation and destruction. But not everyone in the galaxy welcomed Earth's Deathworlders. Far beyond Valara, in a dark corner of space, the Ravager High Commander watched the arrival of the Earth's fleet with growing fury. "They come with fire and steel," he growled. "These Deathworlders are no simple warriors. If they save Valara, they will stand against us and all who dare oppose Earth's will." He sent out secret orders. "Prepare the fleets. We will test this new enemy. We will show the galaxy that Earth's Deathworlders are not saviors, but killers." The war has only just begun. Back on Valara, as the Deathworlder ships continued their deadly assault, the Valarans faced a terrible choice. To survive, they must accept the ruthless ways of their new protectors. Their quiet world was changing forever. In the shadows of the council hall, Lyser met Commander Eric face to face. "Your warriors bring death, not peace. How can we trust this?" Eric's eyes were cold but honest. "Because we will fight until your world lives. Because in the darkness only the strongest survive. We answer your call, Deathworlders, do not turn away from a fight. Be warned. Our mercy is the mercy of the hunted, and it is deadly." The weight of those words hung in the air. Valera's last hope was a fleet of ruthless warriors bred for survival on the deadliest worlds. Their future was uncertain, balanced on the edge of salvation and destruction. And so, as stars burned cold above, Valara prepared for the battle that would decide its fate. The Deathworlders had come fierce, unstoppable, and merciless. Galaxy held its breath, watching what would happen when humanity's deadliest warriors met a peaceful race on the brink of annihilation. The last hope was alive, but at what cost? The sky above Valara was alive with movement. Dark shapes glided silently, blocking out the stars. The mighty ships of the Deathworlder fleet had fully entered the system, casting long shadows over the peaceful planet below. The once quiet world now trembled under the watchful eyes of these fierce visitors from Earth. In the capital city, crowds gathered on the wide terraces overlooking the landing zones. The Valarans stared in wonder and fear at the massive ships descending. Their sleek, black hulls gleamed coldly in the light of Valara's twin moons. Unlike anything the Valarans had ever known, these vessels were built for war, huge, powerful, and armed with weapons that could tear through mountains. The elders of Valara's council met again in the Grand Chamber, their faces tight with worry. "They have come," said the eldest, his voice barely above a whisper. "But what kind of help have we truly received?" Lyser, the young scientist who had first suggested Earth's Deathworlders, stood beside them. She had spent days studying the new arrivals. Her heart pounded with a mixture of hope and fear. "Their fleet is unlike any other. They are warriors, brutal and efficient. Their power is unmatched." "But what of their mercy?" asked another. "Elder, can we trust warriors bred on Deathworlds to protect us without destroying us?" Outside, the first wave of Deathworlder soldiers disembarked. Clad in dark armor, they moved like shadows across the landing grounds. Their faces were hidden beneath helmets, but their movements told the story of hardened fighters who had faced death and won. They spoke little, their actions sharp and exact. Commander Eric led the troops, his presence commanding and cold. He walked among the Velerans, observing them carefully. To the Velerans, his gaze was both frightening and fascinating. Here was a man who carried the weight of countless battles on his shoulders. His every decision could mean life or death. Aric's voice was calm but firm when he addressed the council. "We came because your call reached Earth. We are here to save Valara from destruction. But understand this, we do not fight with kindness. We fight with strength, with fear, and with total resolve. There is no mercy in war, only victory or death."
Oh.
The Velerans exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the peaceful help they had dreamed of, but their options were gone. Tensions rose quickly. Misunderstandings sparked small conflicts. One group of Veleran soldiers, unused to Earth's harsh ways, tried to limit the Deathworlders' movements. The Deathworlders responded swiftly, and without warning, their weapons trained to deadly effect. A warning shot, precise and brutal, shattered the peace. Rumors spread that the Deathworlders had attacked without cause. Fear gripped the people. Yet the council held firm, knowing that the Deathworlders were their last chance. Lyser stayed close to Commander Auric, hoping to understand these strange warriors. "Why do you fight like this?" she asked one evening. "Why no mercy?" Auric looked out into the dark sky. "On Earth's death worlds, mercy means death. Every day is a battle to survive. We fight like this because it is the only way we live. If we show weakness, we are destroyed. We bring this strength to your world so you can live." "But your strength frightens us," Lyser said softly. "Your way is not our way." Eric nodded slowly. "It is not easy to understand. But sometimes, peace is won through fire and blood." Meanwhile, the Ravager forces sensed the change. The arrival of the Deathworlders disrupted their plans. They increased their attacks, testing the Earth Warriors' strength. The battles that followed were fierce and unforgiving. Veleran soldiers fought alongside Deathworlders for the first time. They saw the true cost of this alliance, the deadly precision of Earth's warriors, the cold focus that drove them. Casualties mounted on both sides. The Ravagers began to retreat. In a quiet moment between battles, Lyser stood beside a crater left by a recent fight. She looked at the shattered remains of a Ravager ship, then at the armor of a fallen Deathworlder. "Soldier, there was pain and loss on both sides. Do they ever stop fighting?" She wondered aloud. Eric's voice came behind her. "No, and neither should we, because if we do, we die." The galaxy watched as Valara became a battlefield unlike any before. The Deathworlders fought not just for the Velerans, but for their own honor and survival. Their presence sent shockwaves through nearby systems. Some feared Earth's warriors. Others hoped the Deathworlders would be the force to stop the Ravagers once and for all. News spread quickly. Earth's Deathworlder fleet had arrived. Some whispered of brutal saviors. Others called them monsters. The truth was somewhere in between. Veleran leaders debated. Could they accept these warriors' harsh methods? Would the price of survival be their own soul? In the Capital's Council Hall, the mood was tense. "We owe our lives to these warriors," Lyser said quietly, "but at what cost? Are we losing ourselves to their way of war?" One elder replied, "Better to live under their shadow than be crushed by the Ravagers." The choice was clear, but uneasy. Far from Valara, the Ravager High Commander gathered his forces. "Earth's Deathworlders are stronger than expected," he growled. "But we will not be defeated by a few hunters from a distant world. Prepare. The next wave? We will break them in Valara with fire." His words promised more destruction, more pain, and a war that would push all sides to their limits. On Valara, under the cold light of the moons, Commander Auric prepared his fleet for the battles ahead. His soldiers were ready, trained on the deadliest worlds. They fought not for glory, but for survival. They were the Deathworlders, ruthless, unstoppable, and merciless. As Valara's fate hung in the balance, the planet's people could only hope that the brutal warriors who had answered their call would be their salvation and not their doom. The quiet days of hope on Valara were shattered by the thunder of war drums in space. The Ravagers, relentless and savage, were not willing to give up their prize without a brutal fight. Their warships darkened the skies, massive and deadly. Advancing like a storm ready to crush everything beneath, the Deathworlder fleet moved fast and without hesitation. Commander Eric stood on the bridge of the Reaper's Edge, eyes sharp as the battle warnings flashed around him. His voice cut through the tense silence. Enemy fleet approaching. Prepare for combat. Velaran observers watched nervously from their cities. Their once peaceful world was now the front line in a war much larger than they had imagined. The ground shook with the distant explosions of starship battles above the atmosphere. For the first time, Velaran soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder with the Deathworlders. It was a harsh lesson for the gentle people. The Deathworlders were warriors bred in the fires of survival. Their attacks were quick, brutal, and precise. They moved like hunters, striking deadly blows before the enemy could react. Lyser, standing on the observation deck of the command center, felt a chill run through her. "Shh. They are nothing like we imagined," she said quietly. "So fierce, so cold." Eric's voice came through the coms. "War is no place for warmth. Strength and ruthlessness win battles. We fight to survive. The Ravagers will learn this soon." The battle was a deadly dance among the stars.
Ow.
Ravager ships launched swarms of fighters, desperate to overwhelm the Deathworlders' defenses. But Earth's warriors were prepared. Their ships were equipped with weapons forged for destruction. Their crews were hardened by years of harsh training. Velaran pilots struggled to keep pace, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the fight. But they watched in awe as Deathworlder ships tore through enemy lines with terrifying skill. The Ravagers suffered heavy losses, but the enemy was relentless. They sent wave after wave, determined to break through and destroy Valara. Explosions lit the void like stars dying in fire. The battle seemed endless. On the ground, Velaran citizens took shelter as the fight raged overhead. Buildings shook from distant blasts, and the night sky was filled with flashes of destruction. Fear and hope battled inside every heart. In the war rooms, the Velaran leaders faced difficult decisions. Our defenses weaken, an elder said grimly. If this battle lasts much longer, Valara will fall. Lyser studied the battle reports. The Deathworlders are holding the line, but it is costing them too much. We must find a way to fight smarter, not just harder. Commander Arik received the message, but shook his head. We do not have the luxury of time or caution. The Ravagers will break us if we show weakness. As the fight dragged on, the nature of the Deathworlders became clear to all. They were not just soldiers. They were survival machines. Each Deathworlder had faced impossible odds on their home Deathworlds and survived. Their minds were trained to stay calm under pressure, to strike with deadly accuracy, and to endure pain without faltering. Lyser met a young Deathworlder named Kale during a brief lull. His armor was scarred, his face tired but fierce. "How do you keep going?" she asked. Kale looked at her with eyes that had seen too much, because giving up means death. "We have no choice but to fight, to win. It is the way of our world." His words haunted Lyser. The Deathworlders carried with them a cold truth. Mercy was weakness. Strength was survival. Far from the battle, whispers spread across the galaxy. Traitors, spies, and diplomats shared stories of Earth's Deathworlder tales, of warriors who fought with brutal honor, of fleets that never retreated, and of worlds changed by their presence. Some called them heroes, others feared them as monsters. Yet no one could deny their power. On Valara, the people struggled to accept this new reality. Their peaceful way of life was fading beneath the shadow of war and Deathworlder might. Then came the news that chilled the Velarans to the bone. The Ravager High Commander had summoned reinforcements an even greater fleet, armed with new weapons. Designed to crush any resistance, their arrival would mean a fight unlike any before. The council met in urgent session. "We face annihilation," said the eldest. "Even with the Deathworlders, we may not survive." Lyser looked to Commander Arik. "Is there any hope?" Eric's face was hard, unreadable. Hope is not enough. We must be the storm that breaks the enemy. We must fight with everything we have. As the new enemy fleet loomed larger, the Deathworlders prepared for what could be the final battle to save Valara. Their war machines roared to life, weapons charged and ready. For the Valarans, it was a moment filled with dread and desperate faith. The last hope for Valara was no longer just survival, it was victory. But victory demanded sacrifice. Sacrifice could mean losing what little peace remained. The war had already changed Valara forever. A peaceful world, once bathed in gentle light and calm, now trembled beneath the shadows of endless battles. The Ravagers were powerful, relentless, but the Deathworlders were something else entirely. A force born from hardship, shaped by pain, sharpened by survival on the deadliest worlds in the galaxy. Lyser sat quietly in the council chamber, her mind restless. She had spent many sleepless nights, trying to understand the strange warriors who had come from Earth. Their methods were harsh, their hearts cold, yet they fought with an unbreakable will. The Valarans had never seen anything like them. She turned to one of the Deathworlders who had joined the council's discussions, a soldier named Kale, whose calm eyes hid stories of countless battles. "Tell us," Lyser asked softly, "how did your people become like this? Why are you so different from us?" Kale's gaze was steady as he spoke. "Our world Earth is a place where only the strong survive. The Deathworlds are planets, filled with deadly predators, poisonous skies, and constant war. From birth, we are tested by fire and pain. Weakness means death. Mercy is a risk no one can afford." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Our training is brutal, because we must be ready for anything. We learn to fight not just for glory, but simply to live. We survive because we are stronger, faster, and colder than our enemies." The Velaran elders exchanged uneasy glances. The story was hard to hear, but it explained much. The Deathworlders were not just fighters. They were survivors forged by a universe that showed no mercy. As Lyser listened, she thought about what this meant for Valara. Could these warriors truly be allies, or were they something more dangerous? Their power was undeniable, but their nature so different from the Velarans' peaceful ways was a source of fear. That night, Lyser wandered to the city's edge, staring at the stars where the Deathworlder fleet rested. The massive ships were silent giants, ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. She could almost feel the coldness that lived inside those ships, the hard lives of their crews. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft voice of Arik, the Deathworlder commander. He stood nearby, his expression unreadable. "You wonder what we are," he said. "What we come from, what we bring." Lyser nodded. "Your strength frightens many here. We respect it, but fear it too." Arik's eyes darkened. "We do not ask for your love. We ask only that you understand this. Our mercy is the mercy of the hunted. When you are hunted every day, kindness is a weakness you cannot afford." He stepped closer, voice low but firm. "If we fight to win, no matter the cost. That is the truth of Deathworlders." Days passed, and the battle around Valara grew fiercer. The Ravagers launched surprise attacks, hoping to find weakness in the Deathworlder lines. But Earth's warriors were ready. The Deathworlders used tactics unlike any Velaran had seen: quick strikes, ambushes, and relentless pressure. Their training showed in every move. They did not hesitate, did not falter, but the cost was high. Each victory came with losses. Velaran soldiers and civilians alike watched the brutal reality of war play out before them. The Deathworlders fought not like heroes in stories, but like hunters in a trap, desperate and deadly. In one battle, Lyser witnessed the Deathworlders' harshness firsthand. A group of Velaran fighters hesitated to finish off a wounded Ravager. Prisoner, the Deathworlders watching, stepped in and ended the prisoner's life without remorse. The Velarans gasped. "Why?" Arik answered simply, "Because mercy can be a poison. The Ravagers will use any weakness to survive. We do not give them that chance." The Velaran leaders struggled to reconcile their values with the reality of war. Could they accept the Deathworlders' ruthless methods and still keep their own souls intact? Or was survival worth any price? Lysa found herself torn. She admired the Deathworlder's strength and skill, but she feared what that strength might cost them all. One night, she met with Kale again. "Do you ever regret what you have become?" she asked quietly. Kale looked out at the stars. "Regret is a luxury. We have no time for that. If we did, we would be dead." Meanwhile, the Ravager, High Commander, grew impatient. Earth's Deathworlders had turned the tide of battle more than anyone expected. His secret weapons were ready, new horrors designed to break even the toughest warriors. He watched the stars, knowing that the next battle would decide the fate of Velarand, perhaps the galaxy itself. Back on Valara, the people waited, caught between hope and fear. The Deathworlders were their last hope, but also a dark shadow over their future. Lysa stood at the city's edge, eyes on the horizon. The story of Valara was no longer peaceful. It was a story of survival, fire, and steel. The Deathworlders had come. Their secrets were known now. The war was far from over. The stars above Valara burned cold, watching silently as a storm of war approached. The Ravagers were coming back with fury, their largest fleet yet, aiming to crush the planet once and for all. The peaceful world that had once thrived in quiet, harmony was now the center of a violent, desperate struggle. Commander Eric stood on the bridge of the Reaper's Edge, his eyes sharp and steady. Around him, the Deathworlder fleet prepared for battle. Weapons charged, engines roared, and soldiers tightened their grips on their gear. The time for waiting was over. "We fight not just for Valara," Eric said, voice low and strong, "but for every world the Ravagers seek to destroy. Today, we show them the strength of Earth's Deathworlders." Lysa watched from the Velaran command center, her heart pounding. The Deathworlders had brought power and fury, but this battle would test their limits. The skies above her world, filled with the silhouettes of warships, the sound of distant explosions like thunder in the night. The first clash was violent and sudden. Ravager fighters swarmed the Deathworlder fleet, trying to overwhelm them with numbers. But the Deathworlders were ready. Their ships moved like predators, slicing through enemy lines with deadly precision. On the surface, Valaran soldiers fired anti-aircraft weapons at enemy bombers, trying to strike the cities. The ground shook as explosions lit up the horizon. Civilians huddled in shelters, praying for safety. Lysa felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The battle was no longer a distant war in the stars. It was here. On Valara itself, Deathworlder warriors fought with brutal efficiency. Each soldier was a living weapon, trained to strike hard and survive harder. Their armor was thick and scarred, their faces stern and unyielding. Lysa saw a small squad led by Kale, moving through a ruined village to hold a key position. The squad faced heavy fire but did not retreat. Kale's voice was steady as he gave orders: "Hold the line, no one falls back." The Velaran soldiers beside them were inspired but terrified. They had never fought like this before, in the sky above. The Deathworlder pilots pushed their ships to the limit, dodging enemy fire and striking back with brutal counterattacks. Their tactics were ruthless, designed to crush the enemy before they could regroup. Despite the Deathworlder's strength, the Ravagers were relentless. New weapons tore through the fleet's shields, and several Deathworlder ships were lost in fiery explosions. The battle grew bloodier with every passing hour. Lysa received reports of heavy casualties on both sides. She struggled to keep hope alive as the scale of destruction became clear. In the council chamber, the Velaran leaders faced grim truths. "We cannot win without great sacrifice," the eldest said. "Our people must be ready." Lysa's eyes filled with tears. Is there no other way? But for the Deathworlders, there was no other way. Mercy was a luxury they could not afford. The Ravagers would not stop until Valara was destroyed. The only choice was to fight with everything they had or die. Kale returned from the front lines, his armor battered and face smeared with dirt and sweat. "We hold, but only barely," he told Lysa. "The enemy grows stronger. They will push harder." Lysa nodded. "Then we must be stronger still." As the battle raged on, stories of heroism and sacrifice spread. Deathworlders saved Velaran villages from destruction, risking their lives to shield the weak. Yet, their methods remained harsh. They showed no mercy to enemies who surrendered, fearing traps and deception. In one moment, Kale saved a small group of Velaran children trapped in a collapsing building. His rough hands pulled them to safety, and for a brief second, his cold eyes softened. But the war quickly returned, and the hunter became the warrior again. Lyser watched, understanding that the Deathworlders were not monsters, but a different kind of hero. One born from pain, shaped by war, and driven by the will to survive. The turning point came during a massive assault on Valara's main city. The Ravagers unleashed their deadliest weapons, battering defenses and sending shockwaves through the population. Deathworlders responded with a fierce counterattack. Ships dived into the heart of the enemy fleet. Fighters engaged in brutal dogfights, and soldiers fought hand-to-hand to defend the city's gates. In the chaos, Lyser and Auric met briefly amid the command center. "The battle is far from over," Auric said grimly. "But today, we have shown that the Deathworlders will not fall." Lyser nodded. "We owe you our lives." "But what happens after the war? Can peace exist between us?" Eric's eyes were cold, but honest. "Peace is earned, not given. For now, we fight. Tomorrow is another war." As night fell on Valara, the fires of battle slowly dimmed. The Deathworlders held their ground, but the cost was clear. The planet was scarred, its people forever changed. Yet beneath the destruction, a fragile hope remained. The Deathworlders had become more than just warriors. They were the last shield between Valara and destruction. The galaxy watched, waiting for what would come next. The battles had changed Velaran, its people forever. The planet was no longer just a peaceful world of scholars and artists. It was a battlefield, a place where fire and steel shaped every moment. The Deathworlders, fierce and relentless, had become the planet's defenders. Yet even among allies, trust was fragile. In the aftermath of the great battle for Valara's main city, a strange shift began. Some Valarans who had once feared the Deathworlders now saw something else. Strength, courage, and a will to survive that matched their own. Whispers spread among the people. Some called the Deathworlders heroes. Others saw them as saviors sent by the stars, but not all agreed. The council remained cautious, wary of the warriors' brutal ways. "Their methods are harsh," one elder said. "We must not lose ourselves to their way of war." Lyser found herself caught in the middle. She understood the fear, but also saw the growing respect. The Deathworlders fought for Valara, yes, but also carried their own burdens. A dark past shaped by endless conflict and survival on the deadliest worlds. In a quiet meeting room beneath the city, Lyser met with Kale and several Velaran rebels, who had long resisted the Ravager rule and sought freedom at any cost. The rebels were rough, hardened by years of secret battles, but hopeful. "We need your help," one rebel leader said to Kale. "Our fight is not just against the Ravagers, but against those who would control Valara after the war." Kale listened, his eyes narrowing. "The Deathworlders fight to protect Valara," he said. "But we will not be used as tools for power or politics." Lyser stepped forward. "Perhaps we can find a way to work together. The Ravagers are not the only enemy." An alliance began to form, fragile but powerful. Velaran rebels and Deathworlders shared intelligence, coordinated attacks, and planned strategies. The bond between them grew from necessity and something more. For the first time, Velaran fighters learned Deathworlder tactics, fast strikes, ambushes, and relentless pressure. In turn, Deathworlders gained insight into Velaran knowledge of the planet's terrain and hidden paths. Together, they struck at Ravager supply lines and communications, weakening the enemy's hold. The tide of war slowly shifted, but political tension simmered beneath the surface. Some Velaran leaders worried the Deathworlders' influence was growing too strong. "We must protect our people from becoming pawns," an elder warned. In the shadows, rival factions whispered plans too. "Use the Deathworlders for their own gain." The fragile peace risked shattering under the weight of ambition and fear. Lyser knew the danger well. "We must keep our eyes open," she said. "The Deathworlders came to save us, but not to rule." Meanwhile, Commander Eric faced his own challenges. The alliance with Velaran rebels was new, and trust had to be earned. He met secretly with rebel leaders, wary but willing. "The Ravagers are relentless," Eric said. "If we do not stand together, Valara will fall." Rebels nodded. "We fight for freedom. We fight for our future, not just survival." Ara considered this, and we must fight not only as warriors, but as allies. As the alliance grew stronger, the Ravagers grew more desperate. Their new weapons and larger fleets pushed the war into darker territory. Battles became deadlier, destruction spreading across Valara's surface and skies in one fierce fight. Kael led a mixed team of Deathworlders and Velaran rebels on a daring raid against a Ravager stronghold. The mission was dangerous, but success would cripple the enemy's command. The team fought through enemy lines, facing heavy resistance. Kael's cold leadership and the rebels' fierce determination carried them forward. When the stronghold fell, hope surged through the fighters. Yet, victory came with a price. The cost and lives weighed heavily on both sides. Deathworlders buried their fallen comrades with quiet respect. Velaran rebels mourned their lost brothers and sisters. The war was far from over, and every victory brought new challenges. Back in the council chambers, Lyser addressed the elders. "Our alliance with the Deathworlders is our greatest strength. But we must remember who we are. We fight for Valara's future, one that must belong to our people." The elders nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on their shoulders. Far beyond Valara, the Ravager High Commander watched with growing fury. "They grow stronger," he snarled. "These Deathworlders and rebels together, they threaten everything." His voice was cold. "Prepare the final wave. We will crush Valara and show the galaxy that no alliance can stand against the Ravagers." On Valara, beneath the pale light of the moons, new bonds formed. Old fears and doubts clashed with growing respect and hope. The Deathworlders were not just merciless warriors. They were allies in a war for survival and freedom. But the shadows of war and politics ran deep. The future of Velaran, the galaxy, hung in a fragile balance. Valara's skies burned red with the fires of war. The final assault was coming, the greatest and most terrible battle the planet had ever seen. The Ravagers had gathered their full strength, a vast armada armed with the deadliest weapons the galaxy had ever witnessed. Their goal was clear: destroy Valara once and for all. On the other side, the Deathworlder fleet stood ready. Commander Eric paced the deck of the Reaper's Edge, his face set in cold determination. Round him, his soldiers prepared for the fight of their lives. The alliance with Velaran rebels had forged new strength, but this battle would push every spate fighter to their limits. Lyser stood beside the council's war room, watching the star maps flicker with incoming enemy positions. Her heart ached with the knowledge of what was at stake. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of her people, her world, and the fragile alliance they had built. As the first Ravager ships entered Valara's atmosphere, the battle erupted with terrifying force. Explosions shook the ground, lighting the night sky. The sounds of laser fire, missile launches, and starship engines filled the air. Cities were turned to rubble as the enemy unleashed their fury. Deathworlder soldiers fought in the streets, their armor scarred but their resolve unbroken. They moved like shadows, striking with deadly precision. Beside them, Velaran rebels used their knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks, slowing the enemy's advance. Kael led a squad deep behind enemy lines, their mission clear: disrupt the Ravagers' command center and cut off their communication. The journey was perilous, through shattered cities and deadly traps. Every step could be their last. The battle raged for hours, the tide shifting like the stormy seas. Both sides suffered heavy losses. Deathworlders' ruthless tactics kept the Ravagers off balance, but the enemy's numbers and firepower were overwhelming. Lyser watched as the defenders pushed forward, their faces marked by exhaustion and pain. She understood now what the Deathworlders had meant when they said mercy was a luxury. There was no room for kindness, her only survival. In the heart of the fighting, Kale's squad reached the Ravager command center. Out. They fought through guards and defenses, their weapons blazing. When the control room finally fell, the enemy's forces were thrown into chaos. Orders failed to reach the front lines, and confusion spread like wildfire. Back at the Reaper's Edge, Commander Eric received the news. A small smile crossed his face. "Good work," he said quietly. "Now we finish this." The Deathworlder fleet pressed their advantage, striking with unstoppable force. Ravager's ships fell one after another, their great armada shattered beneath the weight of Earth's warriors. But victory was not without cost. The fleet had lost many ships, and the soldiers who survived bore the scars of battle, both seen and unseen. As the final Ravager vessels retreated, a heavy silence fell over Valara. The fires of war dimmed, but the damage was clear. Cities lay in ruins, and the people mourned their lost loved ones. Lyser stood with Kale and Commander Eric, looking out at the battered world below. "We have one," she said softly. At what price?" Eric's eyes were steady. The price of survival is never small. "But today, we have saved Valara." Kale nodded. "And we have shown the galaxy that Deathworlders fight not just to kill, but to protect." In the days that followed, Valara began to heal. The people rebuilt their homes, honoring the fallen and celebrating the brave. The alliance between Valarans and Deathworlders grew stronger, built on respect forged in the fires of war. Yet beneath the hope, there was a quiet warning. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Ravagers were beaten but not destroyed. New threats waited in the shadows, waiting for their chance. Lyser and Auric met one evening on a quiet hill overlooking the city. The moons cast a gentle glow, softening the scars of war. "Do you think peace is possible?" Lyser asked. Auric looked to the stars. "Peace is a journey, not a destination. We must be ready for what comes next." Lyser smiled faintly. "Then we walk that path together." The final stand was over, but the story of Valara and the Deathworlders was just beginning. The galaxy had witnessed the power of Earth's fiercest warriors and the courage of a world that refused to fall. The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. When death and destruction came, the Deathworlders answered the call. The dawn over Valara was unlike any the planet had seen in centuries. The skies were painted with soft gold and pink, a gentle light that touched the scars left by war. The great battles were over, but the world beneath the rising sun was forever changed. Lyser stood on a hill overlooking the capital city. The ruins of shattered buildings and broken streets told the story of the war's cost. Yet, among the rubble, life was stirring. People moved with quiet determination, rebuilding homes, planting gardens, and lighting fires of hope. Beside her stood Commander Auric, the Deathworlder warrior whose cold strength had saved Valara from destruction. His eyes, once hardened by endless battle, now showed a hint of something softer, cautious hope. "We fought hard," Auric said, his voice low, "but the real challenge begins now." Lyser nodded. "War took much from us, but it also taught us what we can endure. Valara will rise again." The alliance between Valarans and Deathworlders had changed both worlds. The peaceful Valarans learned the harsh truths of survival and strength, while the Deathworlders glimpsed the value of hope and trust beyond battle. In the council chambers, plans were made not just to rebuild, but to prepare. The galaxy was vast, and dangers still lurked in the shadows. The Ravagers were defeated but not destroyed. Other enemies watched and waited. "We must stand ready," Lyser told the council. "Our survival depends on unity between our people and with the Deathworlders." The elders agreed, their faces marked by determination and wisdom. Valara would no longer hide in peace. It would stand strong, a beacon against darkness. In the days that followed, the Deathworlder warriors shared their knowledge. They trained Velaran soldiers in new tactics, survival skills, and fierce discipline. The Valerans adapted quickly, their minds open to change and growth. Kale, once a fierce soldier, now taught young Velaran recruits. His lessons were harsh but fair, pushing them to become warriors who could protect their world without losing. Their humanity.ysar watched these changes with quiet pride. The future was uncertain, but the people of Valara were ready to face it, dashed together far beyond Valara. The galaxy was not silent. News of the Deathworlder victory spread like wildfire. Some worlds feared Earth's warriors, while others sought their alliance. The balance of power was shifting, and the future held new possibilities and new threats. Commander Eric received messages from Earth. The Deathworlder fleet would not rest. They would continue to fight where needed, protecting those who could not protect themselves. Yet Eric knew this was more than a mission. It was a calling. The Deathworlders had answered a desperate plea and, in doing so, had rewritten the fate of a world. On the hilltop, Lyser and Arik stood watching the sun rise higher. The city below was alive with the sounds of rebuilding and new life. Children laughed, farmers worked the soil, and the stars above began to fade with the coming day. "Do you think this peace will last?" Lyser asked. Arik smiled, faint but real. "Peace is fragile, but it is worth fighting for. And if it breaks, we will fight again." Lyser nodded. "Then let this be the start of something new, a future built on strength and hope." The war was over, but the story of Valara and the Deathworlders was just beginning. They had faced darkness together, and now they faced the dawn. The galaxy had seen what happened when humanity's deadliest warriors answered the call, and the future would never be the same.